From the city of brotherly love, this is Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser.
Happy Memorial Day. You just arrived to the newest episode of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your rockstar wannabe host, David Strausser. This is your place to learn how to grow a business during complete global chaos. As always, this episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsor and SAP Global Platinum Partner, Seidor, Seidor. If your business is on QuickBooks, Maz 90, or some kind of legacy solution like green screens and Excel sheets, give us a call. We'll help you update that by automating your business processes and really just helping you break through the barriers that prevent growth. Reach out to me, reach out to them, Seidor.com. Let's get your business moving forward. Now, let's get back to today's episode. I get calls and emails all the time. So I imagine many of you out there watching or listening probably have people trying to sell you some sort of franchise, or you have had at one point or another. But did you know that you can get a franchise agent to represent you? I never knew that. I always had people cold calling, emailing me, stuff like that. I didn't know that a franchise agent even existed until I did this interview today. You want to know what the best part is? So I guess I'm throwing it all out in the open early. But the best part is, bottom of the day, the franchise pays them. You don't pay them. That to me is incredible. So who do we have today? None other than a franchising expert, Jane Stein. Jane Stein and her team help franchise investors identify and vet opportunities in their market nationwide. They help you identify the right business that aligns with your lifestyle objectives and budget, as well as your transferable skill sets. Check them out at yourfranchiseswaiting.com. So hey, without further delay, let's bring Jane right on in here.
It's all about the money. The money.
Jade, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
Oh, I've always wanted to be Shark Bait.
Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you so much for coming on. We have a tradition on the show. Very first question we ask every single guest. What's your background? What do you do for a living? How'd you get there? You know, basically, in a nutshell, tell us what makes Jane, Jane.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me, David. So let's do background. I started my career and was close to 30 years with a major Wall Street firm. I started with E.F. Hutton. That's going to immediately tell people how old I am. But I was very young and stayed in the same corner office. It merged about 1 billion times. I wish I had kept all my business cards. When I retired, we were Morgan Stanley. And I retired young. I was burnt out. I was 47 years old. We were fortunate in terms of the wealth we were able to accumulate. Shout out to the bull market of the late 80s and 90s. And moved to Colorado to...
Let the good times roll, right?
Right. Moved to Colorado to raise my boys. My boys at the time were 6 and 9, and I was just sort of done. And that's what I did, and volunteered and was in the classroom. And after about 9 years of that, or I don't even know how many years of that, my oldest was going to college, and I realized I was bored out of my mind. And I miss business. I miss having meaningful conversations with smart people. And so I started thinking that I would buy a business, because I've always wanted to own a business and I had capital. And my understanding of a franchise back then was, I'll just throw money at it and they'll run it for me. That's how much I knew.
So you're saying that's not franchising?
Yeah, I know. I hate to educate people when they come in with that expectation. The disappointment is palpable. But anyway, I start clicking around on the internet and I immediately get inundated with franchise brokers, because it turns out when you click on anything that is a franchise specific site and says, send me more, or tell me more, uh, that is not going to the franchise. Franchise brokers have purchased those lead sources.
Well, that's almost like anything. I mean, like, for example, I do ERP, and there's a lot of ERP type brokers out there that if it's like, yeah, we're looking for a new ERP solution, you think you're signing up to get more information, but it's actually going to a company that's selling the leads. I mean, even back in the early 2000s, my father had a regional construction company that focused on roof and siding windows. And back then, like the way to get internet leads was to purchase leads from one of those brokers. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, that's, I think, been a staple of the internet for the last 20 plus years.
And so what happened was I'm talking to all these guys, and they were all men and older men, I might add. And I'm guessing. Obviously, you don't see them. It's a phone call, and I'm realizing the light bulbs are going off. Ding, ding, ding. It's like, wow, opportunity. Because I basically built my book, over the telephone. I'm good at building relationships over the telephone. A lot of people are not. I understand people. I'm pretty intuitive listener, and these guys weren't, frankly. And so, bottom line is, I just started looking into it, and it really hit all the boxes for me. It's problem solving, it's research, and it's really the number one thing I like to do, which is help people build wealth. I mean, there is literally nothing more satisfying than helping somebody achieve financial security. And I have a sweet spot for helping women achieve financial security. So anyway, it was just like a no-brainer for me, and that's how I got into the business.
Yeah, that's great. So you basically told us what a franchise is not. So let's follow up with that. What exactly is a franchise in your definition?
Well, there's a legal definition, which is that there's a franchise fee, that there's royalties, because in my world, there's also something called business opportunities, and those are not regulated. But franchising, let's talk about the good news. It's the sale of franchises, I should say, is highly regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. So as part of your due diligence process, you are going to receive a 200 plus page document, franchise disclosure document. They're required to disclose to you if any of them have been sued, if any of the principals have filed for bankruptcy, the names and contact information of every franchisee active in that system, the same contact information for anybody who has left that system in the last 3 years. So there is a lot of information.
What do you mean by left that system? So, like a franchisees that unfranchised?
Failed, closed their doors, walked away, never opened. This is shocking to me when I got in the business, how many people will write a check for $30 or $40 or $50,000 and never open their doors and walk away. Crazy. That is a bad franchise consultant who somehow got somebody over the line without really doing the necessary steps as far as, are you ready? Do you understand what it's going to take? Have you talked to a million franchisees? Is your funding lined up? Do you have adequate financial runway? But anyway, yeah, shocking.
I mean, I can kind of speak to too, because again, while your expertise is franchising, my day job is ERP. But there's a lot of similarities that I'm seeing because it really comes down to, I guess, kind of like you can call it the sales process and how you qualify and vet your customers and making sure that like we have scope or discovery and their scoping documents or statements of work and making sure that that's the actual deliverable and then that it actually gets delivered and implemented. It sounds like that process is kind of similar to what you're describing, where like I would call those in my world like a failed implementation. So they're a failed, franchisor, franchisee. I don't have my language correct with that, where they invested the money, they were going to do it, but it wasn't planned out right, and maybe it was framed wrong, wrong expectations, something like that, and it never got off the ground.
Yeah. Or they chicken out. Um, yeah. And I guess I would clarify one thing. My role in the process actually is not to sell the franchise, right? They have people that do that. They have franchise development teams and a director, and they'll be assigned a rep, and the rep takes them through a very structured sales process. They don't call it that, they call it an awards process. And it's true. There people, not everybody can get approved, and the franchisors, some are pickier than others. Um, but anyway, yeah, my role in the process is to make sure my client is educated, make sure they have the financial runway, make sure they're asking the right questions, right? I don't ever want to be responsible for having somebody lose their, you know, net worth. Um, so I'm encouraging.
So you work for the person that wants to get the franchise, and you're basically, I don't know, lack of a better term, their agent, as far as like their consultant, to help them get the right franchise selected. Is that kind of right?
Exactly. But what's weird, I'll be clear, is I'm paid out of the franchise fee by the franchisor. That's how we're compensated. So it's kind of like real estate, right? Except you can't go to the franchisor direct and save any money. The franchise fee is regulated and set in stone. If it's in their document that it's 40,000, that's how much you're going to pay. But if you don't work with a consultant, the franchisor is going to keep all of that. If you do, the franchisor is going to give part of that to the referring broker. So it is a little weird. I'm compensated by the franchisor, but my interest is in seeing you succeed. And I honestly don't care what franchise you invest in. I want to make sure it's a good fit, and I really take my role seriously in that process.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love what you do with helping people, grow their wealth and create, I guess you could say alternate lines of revenue income streams, because I'm sure some of your clients are probably very wealthy, millionaires, multimillionaires, but there's probably people that are just, they're wealthy, but they're not exactly at that status. And, this is something that is potentially a game changer for their future, to the positive of building wealth or generational wealth that can be passed on to their kids or relatives or whatever. Is that about right?
100%. And the satisfaction piece for me is in that latter category, right? Not the multimillionaires that, are just adding to their streams of revenue. The status,
Another bucket on their many.
and someone else is going to run it for them, right? They've got a team of people and they run all their other businesses. Now, the enjoyment and the satisfaction is helping someone do exactly what you said. Either they want to build generational wealth, they want to secure their financial future because they're not seeing a path to retirement where they're at, um, or they are wanting to, have more freedom and time with their families. I mean, so many different pieces of that in terms of what people are looking for, and that's where the fun is in the research. Because
So I got two quick questions for you. First one is, I know that you've already said that you've carved out a niche as far as working with women, but I'm sure not all your clients are 100% women, or are they 100% women? No, okay. So you have a mix, but it is a niche to where you specifically try to help with women in this area too. What age group do you normally find the people in? And does it, vary by gender at all, or are they all pretty much around the same age group?
yeah, that's interesting. The traditional franchise buyer back in the day, not the investor, but the buyer, was somebody in their late 50s to late 60s who has been downsized. and forced entrepreneur, right? And so that was kind of the '08 to 10 scenario. And I think over the years, it's really morphed. More and more younger people are reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and wanting to like have alternate streams of income coming in. Um, but I would say that in general, people don't accumulate capital until they're in their 40s, because we'll talk about how much money you need, but really, and other brokers feel differently about this, but I really don't believe you should invest in a business unless you have 100,000 in cash accumulated, not in your retirement account, and that your net worth is as close to 250,000. And to me, I just feel like that just gives you more runway. It's easier to fund. From my background, I understand how funding works and the pitfalls of funding. And not that you can't get a loan if you only have 40,000 in the bank, but they shouldn't be giving you a loan.
Well, I am trying to build my guitar collection up to have a net worth of about 250,000, but I'm probably about 200,000 short of that goal. Yeah, yeah, that's that to me, guitars are like the pieces of art. Some people buy art. I buy handmade guitars because I think they're beautiful. They relatively hold value pretty well. So that's been my investment of choice. Plus, I mean, you can't really play a painting, but you can play a guitar and have fun.
Nice. I love when people collect stuff. We have a friend, and we're over there for dinner the other night, and he said, "Have I ever showed you my basement?" I'm like, "No." So we go down to his basement. It is filled, and I'm going to show my ignorance now because I'm trying desperately to remember the name of those old Victrolas with the giant. They played radios. Excuse me. They play albums, but even like 1930s, they had discs, and it comes out of the big horn. I mean, I'm not kidding. The guy must have had $1 million worth. He had like famous people's radios. It was crazy. And this is his thing. And he travels around the country and he has a whole group of people that do this that he started. I just think it's so cool. I wish I had a hobby or something like that that was interesting.
Go out and buy a guitar. Yeah, you should. You should. So the follow-up question I had to that then was more okay. You go out, you talked about a little bit about, you know, how much wealth or money someone should have to start franchising. Realistically, how much should people expect to be making off of a franchise?
Oh, I love that you asked that. And, if it were franchise specific, were the laws of the rules regarding the sale of franchises would preclude me for telling what I know. So I'm not going to name any businesses, but I would just say let's do generally. Uh, Brick and mortar, meaning you've got a physical space, you've got a monthly nut of 7 to 8,000 in your rent minimum, you've got staff. You are not going to break even very likely for 9 months. And you are not going to be able to pull out a lot of money out of that business for likely 2 years, maybe 3. So you got to be prepared for that. Quick ramping home-based service businesses. And in my world, home-based doesn't mean you're sitting there in your home, but you don't have a storefront. You're in an industrial warehouse somewhere. You're providing services to businesses or to consumers, B2B, B2C. You can cash flow in a month. You can cash depending on the ticket price. If it's a $6,000 flooring business, whatever, and you only have one tech, you're going to cash flow on your first job. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, so when I hear franchising, I mostly think, I don't know, maybe I'm antiquated in this thinking, but I mostly think restaurants, fast food. Is that a predominant part of the industry these days, or is it not? How does fast food work into this? I've always wanted to open up a Jack in a Box down the street from my house. So Yeah, because I want the fried tacos. They are the most disgusting things ever. But I moved to Tijuana, Mexico when I was 18, and I was living down there. And I would work in San Diego, crossing the border. For people that don't know, San Diego and Tijuana is literally a huge metropolitan region that's literally divided by a border fence between the U.S. and Mexico. And I'd cross the border every single day to work in San Diego. But on doing so, because I was, 18, 19 at the time, on my way home to work, home from work or on my way to work in San Ysidro, which is the San Diego city that's right there at the port of entry. There's a Jack in a Box, like a block. Well, it used to be a block away from where you would start walking into Mexico. And I would pick up my tacos and jumbo jack to munch on my walk across the border. So I don't know. It just brings up vibes of my past. And I've always wanted a Jack in a Box.
That's funny. Well, I'll have to research that for you to see what they cost. Um, what was the question? I totally forgot.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. My story threw you up. But is restaurant still a primary? Is that still as big as it used to be? Maybe.
Yeah, it is. QSR, healthy eating. Um, Restaurants are a very large percentage of franchises, but I will tell you, in the 8 years I've been doing this, I think I've placed one person in a restaurant because A, once you understand the unit economics of various industries and you understand what the issues are in a restaurant, in terms of labor, that labor pool, in terms of cost of goods, in terms of food spoilage, in terms of margins.
Yeah, most people don't realize margin on the fast food industry is very, very small. And that goes into, I think, can evolve into a huge political conversation with the hourly wages, weights, and stuff like that. But the margins after franchise fees are very, very minimal from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, they're not 20%, let's just put it that way, like service businesses. Um, so basically, the way wealth is built in restaurants is to own 10. And then now you own your 10 Jack in the Box, you're going to buy, you're going to sign a development to open 20 Carl's Jr.'s. And now you're going to open 20 Marco's Pizzas. And that's the way multimillionaire portfolios are made in that business. Not to say you can't make a living from one killer restaurant, but people are fickle. I mean, there's just the risk that that's a high failure rate. And I guess because I am not a huge believer in that business model as in terms of risk to reward, unless you happen to get the right one. It's just easy. There's just so many easier ways to make money. I'll put it that way.
So one of the things that I saw in your bio is that for talking points was that there's some surprising character flaws that you actually need to have in order to be successful franchisee. Can you kind of go over those a little bit for us? Tell us what kind of flaws make someone successful.
So I guess I would say you really need to be a rule follower and not a super skeptic. There's a time for skepticism, and that's the research process. Once you've invested in a franchise, you have to be all in. You have to suspend your disbelief. You have to suspend your criticism. You have to suspend your skepticism and be willing to go all in and follow that system, even if you think it's stupid. This is their operations manual. This is what's been tried and tested. I'm sure you have analogies in your business. You want to just do it their way. I'm sure you have a million creative ideas to make it better. This is not the time, unless it's a brand new franchise and they're wanting that input. But for the most part, no. And they don't want a complainer in their system. And let's see, I wish I had prepped for that question because there's another one that's kind of bubbling up and not quite coming to the surface. But
We can always circle back if you remember it, because I did what you brought up the R word, research. Okay. What kind of research do you need to do when you're thinking about franchising? Franchising is one of the topics that has always interested me, but I've never, have actually pursued it yet. It's not ready. I'm just about to turn 40, so I'm kind of getting into that research phase of looking to expand out, but I'm not there yet. But what type of thing should someone like me be looking for when I'm looking to start a franchise?
Great. So one thing I just wanted to circle back to, because you just reminded me of it when you said I'm about to turn 40 and you said what age group? I mean, I cannot tell you how high the percentage is of people that are just turning whatever the number is. And they're like, it's time. I am just about to turn 50. I am just about to turn 40. It's those two. Sometimes it's 60, but mostly it's 40 but mostly it's 50. And, and timing is everything. And, you got to get your kids through college or have the funds first to get them through college. And, there's just generally speaking, sort of the time is right. People will have more time on their hands. They've got the money, blah, blah, blah. Um, the research process I feel like you walked right into this, David. I have an ebook that I wrote on the due diligence process, but there's a very specific series of steps that you want to take, which include, first of all, how it's going to look is you hopefully are working with a consultant who can narrow down that field of 700 franchises that are in operation at any given time to 10 that are available in your marketplace, are within your budget and or funding capabilities, which is you've been pre-approved already by your consultant, blah blah blah, in your wheelhouse in terms of your transferable skill sets, and we think would be good in your specific market. And meet your lifestyle objectives. If you don't want to work nights and weekends, of course, we're not going to look at food. If you want a Monday through Friday business, then we're going to specifically look for things like that, maybe B2B, whatever. Anyway, then you're going to be presented with 3 to 8 options that are available in your marketplace that your advisor thinks you should begin to look at first. And then you will pick 3 or 2 that you are excited about and that you'd like to learn about first. And then you'll be introduced to the franchise development team. Now, they are in sales mode. They won't say so, but they are. And you will be going through 3 to 5 weekly discovery calls with the franchise, each of which is an hour ish, and they can run even longer. And like the first webinar might be on overall the business model. The second webinar might be on unit economics. And whatever they're allowed to disclose, they'll kind of walk through. That's kind of a fine line. At that point, you'll be disclosed, meaning you'll get that franchise disclosure document, which will be overwhelming and you're going to freak out. Then on your third call, you're going to be marketing. Here's what we do for marketing. Here's what your marketing package looks like, blah, blah, blah. Culminating in about 6 weeks in, 4 weeks in, depending, 3 weeks in, you get to talk to franchisees. That's going to happen one of 2 ways. They're going to have weekly calls that management is not on, that prospective buyers can jump on, prospective investors can jump on and ask anything they want. Now's when you can ask, how much money are you making? How long did it take you to break even? What's your monthly expense rate? What's been the biggest surprise on your P&L? Those hard questions can only be answered by the franchisees. And that's the most important. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where all my deals fall apart or move forward. So now you have that discovery process where you're in what's called validation. You're speaking to other franchisees. You can build out a prospective pro forma. You can ask those hard questions. And you want to be able to speak to at least 5 of those people because you're going to see a world of difference, right? Some people are in every system every business, there's high performers, low performers, and everybody else in between. Then you'll be invited to the corporate office, virtually or in real time, for what's called Meet the Team Day. And that's when they expect you to make a decision. So the whole thing is 60 to 90 days.
60, 90 days. That was going to be my question. Like, roughly how long is the process? Also, I'm just kind of curious. I mean, I never really realized in the world of franchising that there were people like you, essentially agents, to help people find the right franchise. How many people use a service like yours versus they're just like, oh, I want to open up a Jack in a Box, back to Jack in the Box. You got me thinking of tacos now. I'm blaming it on you. But I want to open up a Jack in a Box. I love Jack in a Box, and they just go direct and do it on their own. How many use agents versus do it on their own?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. We are I'm thinking it would be less than 30% that know and find an advisor, broker, consultant, coach. Everybody calls themselves different things. Versus 70% who do exactly what you said. And, that's kind of the worst way to do it, by the way, is to, I like the food, so I think I'll bring one to my town. Um, but anyway, I think it's a low number because, first of all, there's not a huge number of franchise consultants. It's not like realtors where when you go to a networking group, every other person's a realtor. Every networking group I've ever been to, I'm the
Or insurance agent or financial advisor, those three. But I don't want to disparage them because they do make up a large part of this audience. I love you all.
I was one. And so I'm always the only franchise broker in the room. It's pretty fun to go to networking events for that reason. Everybody's always so fascinated. But
same with me. I mean, being an ERP, I'm usually the only ERP. There might be other people in tech, but ERP specifically, I'm usually the only ERP person in the room. So I can, similar experience in those regards.
So anyway, there's not a lot of us. It's not like so. Short answer is I think most people don't know that there is such a thing, and that's okay too.
So that's why you're doing podcasts, right?
Yes, getting the word out.
You got to educate people. You got to educate people. So for last topic, one other thing that kind of really interested me when I was going over your materials was the quote unquote girlfriend's guide to franchising. You want to go over that? Explain that to me. I assume that's because you have that niche with helping women franchise, but I wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the promo. When I was in financial services, I just developed a niche of helping women. I, at one point, had a program called Money Matters for Women, and I would put on workshops with 1,000 women in the room. It was fun because I really feel that women need to be educated about money, and it's a stereotype, but it is still true that that is something that often is deferred to the husband, which is, huge mistake. Everybody.
My wife wants nothing to do with it. I've tried to push, like, hey, like, her English isn't the greatest. She's an immigrant from Peru and she speaks English good enough, but she's shy of speaking English. But I've tried, like, why don't you like take this off my plate? Like, here's all the logins, just make sure the bills are paid on time. But no, wants nothing to do with money. Would rather I just handled it all, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah. I mean, and in a marriage, there is that segregation of duties, but I would say to her, statistically, she is going to be alone at some point. 9 out of 10, maybe sooner, maybe later. She's got to be the one. You don't want to learn when it's an emergency. So the Girlfriend's Guide to Franchising came about. And by the way, I did spend money to trademark that name. And so if you Google it, it should direct you to my website. But anyway, it came about because the fastest growing segment of buyers of franchises are women. up 83% since 2017. And when I got into the business, I was interviewing other people doing this, which was men mostly. And I would ask, who's your target market, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking of specializing in women. They would all go, ugh, why would you want to work with them? So I was like, oh boy. So nobody was doing it. And there are certain characteristics that make women really good in a franchise. Number one, we know how to delegate. We're willing, we don't have such big egos, huge generalization, by the way. But generally, we don't have such big egos that we feel like, oh, we're going to know a better way. We're not going to butt heads with the operational team on wanting to do it our way. We're going to, like, let me just tell me what to do. I'm going to execute on the strategy. There's many other factors that make women really, really good at business ownership, typically empathy, compassion for employees, for customers. So it's just really, and it just gives me great pleasure to help women achieve financial freedom.
Well, that is awesome. Hey, Jane, thank you so much for coming on, educating us about franchising. I mean, I was like drinking from a fire hose. I learned more about franchising today than I did my whole life. Can you please do us a favor? Tell us, where can people find out more about your business, your franchise is waiting, more about you? How can they hook up with you as far as talking about getting, you helping them find their financial path to freedom forward?
Great. Thank you again for the promo. So my business is called Your Franchise is Waiting. You can Google that or my name. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can put in the Girlfriend's Guide to Franchising. Once you get to my website, there's a million ways to set up an appointment. There's also 3 or 4 ebooks to download for free. One is on funding, one is on the discovery process, one is on just a whole franchising 101. One is on using your retirement money to fund your franchise through a little known funding mechanism. So yeah, a lot of ebooks, a lot of offerings, happy to educate. That's what we like to do.
Perfect. Hey, Jane, thank you so much for coming on. Definitely rock star. This was amazing. And I love what you're doing with helping people find wealth. Thank you again.
Thanks, David.
Yep.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. And thanks for having me.
Cheers. Wow, such an amazing chat with Jane, right? First, though, you all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it sparked those warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help us out, because Shark Bite Biz is one of the greatest kept secrets in the world of small business, please do us a favor, share us out to your friends, your family, your colleagues, anywhere that you dwell on the interwebs. I don't care where you're shared out, what platform. I mean, you can find this show anywhere. And we bring you guests like Jane that, purvey the 3 pillars of this show, the 3 Gs, the personal growth, professional growth, and business growth, each and every Monday. And we only do it if people watch. If nobody was watching, there'd be no sense of doing the show. But people do watch and they do listen. So help us, help us help more people. I'd love to see nothing more than Jane and Shark Bite Biz out there trending. Now let's get back to the real rock star of this episode, Mrs. Jane Stein. So this was really a mind-opening interview, I guess I would say. My opinions of franchising after this interview are totally different than what they were before this interview. It was mind altering. It really opened up how I think about this space altogether. I mean, to be honest, I before this interview, hindsight is 2020. I thought I knew a little bit about franchising, and I did. I knew a little bit deeper than just restaurants, but I mean, realistically, you say franchising, I'm thinking restaurants, I didn't really realize, or insurance agents, I think of that type of stuff too, like those independent agent, maybe with some XXX insurance company, but I never really thought about it the way that Jane presented franchising to me today, and it was extremely educational, helpful. I mean, it's something that personally I want to go check out because I'm always looking for extra revenue streams, not for a hands-on business, but, something that I can monitor and have someone else manage eventually. So it was really, really cool. And I think that was one of the main focuses of this interview, was how franchising can be a new revenue stream for you, for your business, if you have an LLC, for example, or whatever you are. That's really one of the core points, again, of this episode. So everybody that's looking for an additional revenue stream, whether, again, a full-time hustle or a side hustle, franchising, I think, my mind has been changed, and it is a real opportunity for you to open up an additional path towards growing your income. That being said, again, what really blew my mind at the end of this interview, and I spilled the beans in the beginning of the show when I said it, was that agents like Jane, you don't have to pay them. It's not an additional cost to you or out of your pocket. They get paid by the franchise as being the agent that signs you up. And it's not like her goal is to get you with the right person. It's not just to make a quick buck signing you up for one specific franchise. She works with a lot of franchises, and to me, that was kind of really amazing. It was really, really cool to hear because I didn't even know that existed. I didn't understand that's how that world operated. And I hope this episode really brought clarity and understanding to you on the opportunities of opening your own franchise. So anyways, awesome stuff, Jane. Please check out her business. If you think this interview was as enlightening as I have found it, please check her website out. Link will be down below in the description. And just one last personal thank you for Jane for helping people become entrepreneurs. Question of the day. After this interview, what do you think of franchising? Good? Bad? On the fence? Were you as enlightened as I was? Let us know. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify. It will be the episode question. Now, I did find out with Spotify, when you leave an answer to the questions on there, I do have to manually go in there and improve each one. But as long as it's not something that would violate their terms of service, I pretty much, I want people engaged. I want people talking. I want more engagement through our interviews and these topics that we cover each and every week. So I'll pretty much approve everything as long as it falls within the platform guidelines. Do you want to be on the show? If so, we're scheduling for season 7 and 8 right now. Interviews at sharkbitebiz.com. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, watching on Spotify, Patreon, whatever, you can join, become a baby shark for as little as $3 a month. That will enable us to reach more people like you, to get messages like Jane's out to somebody that can really help them. Someone may be thinking like, hey, I can do exactly what Jane just said. That idea she said and that amount of money to start up, bam, that's incredible. You could help that person break through that barrier, which is a thought barrier in this case. That's a barrier preventing growth. Joining allows us, or sharing or subscribing, liking, commenting, all that stuff. It all goes together, plays together, helps us build our community. And lastly, I've got to give a final shout out to our sponsor of this episode, Sador. Okay, if you're still on QuickBooks, it's time to get off. Let's automate those business processes, move your business to the next level. Reach out to me. Or you can go to Sador.com and reach out directly to them, and we will take care of you. Y'all know this by now, but I'll say it once again. I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz. We'll see you all next episode. Cheers.
You just experienced Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the show to help us spread the word about personal, professional, and business growth. Want to be on the show? Send an email to interviews@sharkbitebiz.com. A special shout out to our sponsor, SAP Platinum Partner, Sador. Get off QuickBooks and move your business to the next level. Reach out for more info. Thanks for listening and see you next time.